learn because they could see what they did right away. And as a result of that, pictures got better. And furthermore, because they could see what they were doing and could throw out the bad stuff, or what they thought was the bad stuff, they could take chances. They could feel free to take a risk, to create something that was really different and original. So, bottom line, I am very, very bullish on news photography, on photojournalism. It's never been better, and it gets better all the time. Unfortunately, as I said at the paper this morning, that business is changing. All print is changing. There's a conundrum. It's the publisher's conundrum. And here's what it says. This was written by Michael Wolff in Vanity Fair 2 months ago. The paper version of the New York Times has 1.1 million daily readers and makes less than $2 billion a year. The online version has 48 million readers a month and likely makes about $250 million. This is a problem, since the Time news gathering budget is about $300 million. This is some conundrum. You have an old-fashioned business which supports your news gathering operation so that you can take that news and put it online to readers and to advertisers at much cheaper rates, which ultimately attracts all your readers and advertisers and puts your money-making enterprise out of business. Does this resonate with you? Scary. It's scary. And that is the conundrum. The conundrum is, okay, we want to go and have more online assets, but it's a different economic model. It's going to change. So, unfortunately, here's the problem with newspapers. Newspapers, as I said, it's the most profitable business on earth. But everybody's trying to maintain that profit margin. And what's happening? The circulation is dropping. New York Times yesterday had a story that in the last 6 months, American newspapers had lost 2.6% of their circulation in a 6-month period. And that's because young people won't read the newspaper. They refuse to. It makes their hands dirty. The people who read the newspaper are people like me, and we're dying. And so what's happening is your circulation is going down, and the advertising which supports the newspaper is also dropping precipitously. Why would anybody advertise in a classified in a newspaper when you can go on Craigslist? You wouldn't do it. And you know, I was in Fresno doing a short course at the Fresno Bee, and they were lucky. I always take a look at what the business model is at that newspaper and how they're doing, and I know when I go in there. And so I was talking to the publisher, and I said, you know, I've seen that your circulation is holding steady because they have a lot of immigrant laborers coming into Fresno. It's an agricultural center. And he said, yeah, that's right. And I said, so things must be pretty good. He says, well, the only problem is 2 months ago, the largest department store in Fresno closed down. That was 1/3 of our display advertising budget. One store. And this is happening all over. As Walmart comes in, Walmart doesn't advertise in newspapers. They shut down all those people who do advertise in newspapers. So, as much as you may love that print product is in danger of not being there much longer. So then what happens? Well, the publisher wants to save his brand. And he can do that by migrating the paper to the web. The web today, what's the most popular thing on the web? Tell me. What? YouTube. MySpace, YouTube. What is that? It's video. And everybody, not only does everybody like to look at those movies, but all of a sudden everybody is a producer of videos. And the newspaper, if they want to make their website compelling, what they need to do is they need to have video. A very, very interesting statistic. The Pearson Group, early this year, for the first time had a survey, and what they found was that newspaper web videos were outselling advertising 2-to-1 over local TV stations. 2-to-1. The exact figure was $81 million for newspaper web video, and it was $31 million for the local TV. Now, does that get your interest?
I think so.
Yeah, absolutely get your interest. And so, because the wonderful thing about video is you can put commercials on video. And advertisers have been very reluctant to buy advertising on websites. Why? Because publishers gave advertising away for a long time. You give me a display ad in the paper, I'll give you that web advertising. So now that you need that web advertising money and you go back, these same advertisers say, no, remember you were giving that to me. But web video wasn't on the menu back then. It was exempt. So now if you can focus your advertiser on, okay, we can give you a 3-minute web video and we've got all these great stories and we will put your commercial right up there on top. What happens? Advertisers respond to that. And this brings me to the role of the photographer in photojournalism. And the simple fact is, and I was at your paper this morning, and I think I cheered up your people at some point after beating them over the head, because what I said was, in this Web 2.0, photojournalism 2.0, the people who are uniquely suited to do this work with high definition video are the photographers. They have the eye, they have the storytelling skills. It's just a matter of training them, the differences between video and still photography. And by the way, I wish I could show you some videos, we don't have time, but the simple fact is, you let a newspaper photographer, a good newspaper photographer, teach them how to use that high definition video camera, and you know what? You can tell that this was shot by a photographer. And you're in the business, and you're nodding your head. You can tell that eye just carries over once you learn how to do sequences instead of decisive moments. And if you remember that a sports picture, I got to shoot it at a 500th of a second or a 1,000th of a second, so I can freeze it, so I can then download it in a 68 meg file to the front page of the newspaper. The photographers become the savior of the newspaper. That is why, and I said this morning, I said, you know, the dirty little secret has always been that photographers were always down at a lower level. And I know you're going to say, no, not at El Novo do it. But the fact is they were, because it goes back to the days when they went in a dark room and a red light went up. What are they doing in there? I mean, we're out here working diligently. Those people are in there, you know, doing some weird stuff. But the reality is that what the publisher needs now going forward to save his brand is the eyes and the ability of the photographers. photojournalists. And this is not only newspapers, it's going to be magazines. And I said, well, and I've seen this happen at some newspapers. They say, well, we've got a TV station that we own. Why can't we just have the TV cameraman come in? Well, the answer is that's different. That's television. And you know about this. Television has always been a collective art. It's the relationship between the photojournalist and the sound man and the producer and the editor. All those people have to work together to create this product, which is going to be 1 minute, 10 seconds exactly, that's going to air at 6:17 exactly. And so now you ask those people to come over and work for the newspaper, and they come over and say, where's everybody else? Where are all my people? And the answer is they're not there. Because now it's reduced to one person who does visual storytelling and is responsible for the end product. Nobody else touches it. The photojournalist edits the piece and puts the piece up on the web. One person. And no longer is it a matter of sending a dozen of your best pictures to the picture desk and seeing one picture run as a 2-column cut. You say, what happened to the good stuff? Now you're in charge. Totally in charge. So what that means is the job description changes. And that's why I say, forget about photojournalism. Forget about it. You remember I used to say it was news photography. Now we got that fancy word, photojournalism. In photojournalism 2.0, which is no longer photojournalism, it's visual journalism. Now you become somebody else. And it starts with a P. And it's called a producer. You become a producer of a product in the newsroom. And suddenly you're not that person who went into the dark room with now you become a leader in the newsroom. And the head of the photo department now becomes executive producer. And you do a good job, you become a senior producer and you get paid more. And what you're doing is you are taking advantage of the changes to create a whole new identity for yourself. Does this sound good to the photographers who are here? Yeah, you like that? Yeah, okay. And that is why we find that newspapers who have done this, that the photo staffs are much more motivated. They feel they're much more an integral part of the editorial decision-making process. And they take their job much more seriously and they're much happier about it. Because we know eventually he's going to pay us more money to do this. Because we're providing more value to the newspaper and we're saving it. So basically, that's what I wanted to tell you. It's thinking about, this is the biggest change. Remember, the box camera, and then the Leica, and now the high definition video camera. But it's there to do exactly the same thing, which is to tell stories. And at this point, I think, actually I was pretty good with that.
Yeah.
We got 10 minutes for questions, so I'll open it up.
A ustedes se les ha repartido unas tarjetitas. Pueden anotar sus preguntas en español como quiera, se las traducimos a Dirck, así que por favor escriban sus preguntas y con mucho gusto. Les quería decir que esta noche aprovecho para invitarlos también a la exposición de Pablo Cambó, que es un reconocido periodista, fotoperiodista de aquí de Puerto Rico y está en galería. Así que cuando salgamos de aquí pueden ver la exposición de Cambó, la exposición de la Asociación de Fotoperiodistas y en la Galería Génesis, subiendo las escaleras, hay una recepción también de nosotros. Así que es una noche de fiesta y de muchas actividades. ¿Te querías decir algo? Sí. Albi va a hacer una pregunta.
En lo que llegan las preguntas, cuando usted ve a los jóvenes aquí hoy día, ¿cuál es el consejo que usted le daría a ellos para ser un periodista visual, ¿cuáles son los consejos que usted le daría a los jóvenes periodistas aquí hoy día?
That's a great question. And I gave the same advice to these young people, which is to do this stuff, you got to be smarter. I mean, really, I worked for years at the White House, and you know what I would do at the White House all day? I would sleep. I would go in there, and I would stretch out, and I'd sleep like all the other photographers, and every once in a while I'd be awakened and go into the Oval Office for 30 seconds to do a photo op. Then you go back to sleep. In this, what is the thing you as a photojournalist do more of than anything else? What? That's a question. What do you do more of than anything else when you're working? Wait. You're waiting. You're waiting for this. You're waiting for that. You wait. And what do you do when you're waiting? Well, you're either snoozing, or you're having a beer, or in this new photojournalism, there's no time because your mind is constantly working. Okay, what is this story about? Who is this person? And what is there around here that I can use to tell me that? You know, how am I going to do this? How am I going to ask the questions? What questions am I going to ask? What's the light? If I go from here to there, is there something in the floor that I'm going to trip over because I've got to make a smooth move? And so, and as you're shooting, you're not shooting for one picture. You've got to shoot for a sequence because you've got to cut this sequence. And so what am I going to cut into with this? And he can tell you, you know, it's still photography is like flying a Piper Cub. And I can teach you, go out to the airport and I can teach you in a morning how to get in a Piper Cub and start the engine and take it off. I can teach you that. And I don't know how to fly. But you don't want to be on the Piper Cub after that, because then a lot of other things come in and you're going to crash if you don't know these other things. That's exactly the way it is with video. There are a lot of things that have to come together so that you can cut your story. And what that requires is constant attention. And if still photography is like taking a Piper Cub and taking off, and you go from here to there, this new kind of photojournalism is like flying a helicopter, because you're up and you're going this way and that way and up and down, and he's nodding his head. He knows this is true. And so what that means is, when I started doing video, I realized how dumb I had been shooting still pictures. I realized that I was cruising, you know, and furthermore, and most important, you know how the Indians used to say that the white men would come with those big box cameras and they didn't like to have their picture taken because their souls would be taken? Mm-hmm. In still photography, that's what we do every day. We go in and we extract from a subject what we think is the image, take it, thank you very much, goodbye, and you're out of there. What is this person thinking? What's going on? What is the story? Now you have to become a complete journalist. So it's a much greater challenge, but it's something, if you want to, you can come to my platypus workshops. I teach you how to do this in 9 days. From not knowing how to use a camera until you've got your first 60 minutes quality project produced. You can learn how to do this, because this is a very linear process in the learning, because there are rules that you have to learn. You learn the rules, you apply the routines, and then you start thinking about it. And it's a rush. The day you finish your first product and it's yours, and it's your story, and it's up on the web, and plays for 3 minutes, and that's a big deal. Because if you're a newspaper editor, the thing you want more than anything else is to build a community. And this kind of storytelling is the kind, you know, don't worry about covering the bank robbery. Don't worry about covering the fire, you know. You can do that with still pictures the way you always have. Let TV do that. TV is all set up for that. What you want to do as a visual journalist is you want to tell people stories. You want to tell the stories of the people in your community. And what happens when you do that, they and their friends all go online. And, you know, TV can't do this. TV doesn't have time. That's why, you know, your average TV story is minute 40 or a minute 50. But with the web, it can be as long as you want it to be. Just as long as it's compelling, as long as you're telling your story. And so what that means is you are opening up your coverage to ordinary people and telling the stories of ordinary people. And that is the best brand enhancement you can get. That's when the paper starts to mean something to somebody. Okay,
next question. Put on your translation, it's in Spanish. ¿Qué ha sido lo más impactante que ha visto en su carrera